parishioners at the cathedral, and who has recently published a book called Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen, Convert Maker. And so it's a book about the life and ministry of Archbishop Sheen. Probably everyone has heard, everyone of a certain age, that is to say over 20 maybe or something, has heard of Archbishop Sheen, and many of you who watch Tulsa Time probably watched his weekly television program as well, with his magic angel erasing the chalkboard and the whole thing. Dr. Hughes holds a Ph.D. in historical theology and has previously written on saints and cultural identities. And so we're very happy to have you with us on the program today.
Thank you, Bishop.
Talk about the book, introduce people a little more to Bishop Sheen. He, along with our own Blessed Stanley Rother, Bishop Sheen also has a cause for canonization that is in the works. And so the more people know about these holy men and women and pray for their causes, the more that we see them move forward. So maybe we can just begin by having you talk about what drew you uniquely to write about Bishop Sheen, and then how did your academic background, you hold the Ph.D., how did that inform your book?
Well, I sort of backed into Fulton Sheen. I was looking to do a biography of Claire Booth Luce.
Oh.
Who was really a fascinating person, and she does get into the book. But when I was thinking about doing her book or biography, somebody came out with a 2-volume set on Claire Booth Luce. I thought, I can't compete with that. But I had, in researching her, found that she had been converted to the Catholic Church by Fulton Sheen.
Oh, okay.
And then I got interested in what other celebrities he had brought into the church. And I eventually had a list of converts brought in by Sheen, filled an entire yellow sheet of legal paper. And I started looking into each one of them. And I picked the ones to write about because they had written about themselves. They had autobiographies.
Okay.
They had things that they had published discussing their conversions. And so, that when you start with a project like that, you sort of see what's out there, what other people have written on it. And I'm an historian, so I like to go to primary sources. And one of the reasons I like that fact that these converts had written autobiographies, I like them to be able to talk for themselves.
Yeah, sure.
So I thought that was pretty important, and that's how these people got chosen to be in this book. And Sheen is really just the guiding light for all of them.
Yeah, he, from myself, just from my own personal knowledge of Bishop Sheen, I would be one of those people who's of a certain age that should have seen his program, but I don't recall that we ever saw it growing up. And when I did find out about him, he was already a famous person.
Right.
So the man, Bishop Sheen, that I knew of was someone who was already an author, and he had that program, and he had radio programs and all the things. But there was this whole piece of his life that for me was missing, from birth to whenever he became famous. And so it always seemed odd to me, okay, he's an archbishop. Why is he an archbishop? What is all that about?
It's true that, he's an archbishop. I think he might have even been a cardinal, but he got crosswise with Cardinal Spellman. And I think that was the end of his ecclesial rise. I mean, the Pope, when he handed in his resignation from being the ordinary in Rochester, New York, the Holy Father said, "Well, I'll make you an archbishop." So he's a titular archbishop of some ancient see.
So it came at the end of his
It was
career.
kind of a payoff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, we can discuss what happened in Rochester, and it was a pretty ugly thing for him.
But he was an ordinary then. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, for 30 months.
Oh, okay.
For all of
Short
the
run.
kids. It was very brief, for him, blessedly brief, because it had become just an albatross
Yeah.
for him.
And that then was at the end of his working life. He was.
He had 10 more years after that. He
okay.
jetted all over the world.
Okay.
Was still out there doing things for Rome, and also going to Asia and Europe and Africa and giving retreats. In this latter part of his life, he really loved giving retreats for priests and seminarians.
Right. Yeah, and that comes through in a lot of the things you see, even on his program, his television program. The book that I like best of his is the book called "Those Mysterious Priests," and in part because it has an amazing chapter in it on making the holy hour. But one can see in what he writes there his definite love for priests and desire to help priests do well in their life and in their ministry.
He really did. And I think he was very keen that people keep a holy hour. He thought that was transformational for him and for anybody else who started doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, now in this time of Eucharistic revival that we're still in, the holy hour or making a holy hour or spending time before the Blessed Sacrament has become something widely known and practiced.
He required, if he was going to do a retreat for you, he required that the Blessed Sacrament be there in the monstrance, because he thinks it just indicated something that was not what people are expecting.
Yeah.
I think lots of ways people are expecting this celebrity guy, and it turns out he's an extremely holy person.
Mm-hmm. And you can find still today, you can find lots of his audio on YouTube. So if you just search his name on YouTube.
I listened to hours of it.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Hours and hours.
So Cherie, when you look back into the history of Archbishop Sheen and kind of maybe even the early years of his own conversion and kind of his call to the priesthood, and then obviously the moving into being a bishop, and then to kind of finding this unique apostolate, being this evangelist, what can you kind of point to or some kind of key moments in his own journey in his life that convicted him to be as outwardly focused and charismatic? You can almost use that word in his approach to making Jesus known.
Well, when he was 4 days old, and immediately after his baptism, his mother took him to the side altar, to the Marian altar, and dedicated her son to Mary. So he always looked to Mary. In fact, when he had his confirmation at 12, he again dedicated himself to Mary. And when he was in seminary, he had a mystical experience that he couldn't really explain. It was, he said, as if a warmth had come over him, and that he could feel a presence, and he could, for the first time, feel absolutely convicted that he was meant to be a priest. And he's already in seminary, but he had passed up a full tuition scholarship to get a Ph.D., which he had always really wanted it. He wanted that Ph.D. in philosophy, and he thought then he could go to the seminary later. And his college debate coach said, no, go directly to the seminary and you'll get a wonderful education later. But we have no idea how long it was. But it was as if there was some warmth that just overflowed him. And he was certain that it was the Virgin Mary who was giving him confirmation. There was nothing to see. There was nothing there. There was nothing to hear. She didn't speak, but somehow in his soul, he knew that she had said, my son, you are doing the right thing. I will be with you always.
Yeah.
And I think that really affected him in a way that was quite dramatic.
Yeah.
And it was from that time on that he kept the holy hour.
Yeah, okay.
If you think about, again, Our Lady as the first disciple of Jesus, and Our Lady's whole mission, is to do whatever he tells you, to really lead people to Christ. And so what a beautiful connection that he had with Our Lady. And I think every priest would say there's a special connection in our priesthood to the Mother of God, because, again, we're always pointing people to Christ in our role as ministers. But to know that was a part of his past, and then he exhausted himself in his life, again, to again, point others to Christ through his preaching. And, kind of moving on to the next point here, they say some 42,000 converts, were.
I think that's an undercount, frankly.
What is your number, you think?
I would guess closer to 50 or 60,000. And we don't know. I mean, I don't know who thought that number up. It was in the Positio.
Oh, okay.
And the Positio, for people who don't know what that is, that's the document that the proposing diocese gives to the Vatican on whether or not we should go forward with the canonization of this person, that whole process. So it's a biography, and it's got lots and lots of detail in it,
Right.
Witnessing by other people.
Yeah.
And that's where that comes in that. That was the number given by his first realtor.
Yeah. Now, I bet the number comes from people who wrote into the show.
Well,
or one way or another contacted him.
Well, he said at one point when he was starting out in radio, when he was doing the Catholic Hour,
right,
from 1930 to 1952. So in those 22 years, at the very beginning, he told his cousin he was averaging 50 conversions a week from that program.
Yeah.
And those would be people who would write in.
Right.
But not everybody's going to write in.
Exactly.
So
right.
They really don't know. And I think 50 in the beginning probably was a much higher number by the time you get to the end.
Yeah. Right. He's better known then. In fact, you have focused on notable converts of his. Well, there would be some because he had notoriety.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
Notable people might be more able to find him, to be attracted to him.
So when you think about that number, which again is a magnificent number, and then you think about how that number then will cascade even further as those individuals who have been convert other people. And so just kind of the seeds that he planted and how those seeds have grown. What would you say was his unique charism that drew people to Christ? Like, what did he have that we can learn from kind of in the church today in regards to his effectiveness in converts?
You can't learn this in a college class. He loved people.
Yeah. He
really loved people. He was very personal and connected with people on a very personal level. He was also very intuitive about people. He could sense, for instance, if he was giving a retreat to seminarians, he might go to the, later to their higher ups and say, the fellow in the third row there, I think he's going to leave. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just was the guy falling asleep? Was he asking hard questions? Was he asking hostile questions? He doesn't really explain that, how he would know, but he would know. He really had insight into people, which really comes across in some of his conversion stories.
Yeah. What was didn't he have some formal study in psychology?
No. His brother was a psychologist, or psychiatrist, actually, a doctor, psychiatrist. And he was very hard on Freudian psychiatry.
Right.
I mean, he rejected that as claptrap, and, he spoke out against it, which made everybody really mad at him. A whole bunch of people left their hospital positions. But he said, I'm not talking about psychology. I'm talking about Freudian psychology.
But he, the reason I ask that is because he speaks a lot about it, both on the program and then also in his writings.
It wouldn't be formal, Bishop.
Yeah.
It would be just his life experiences that he's seen people all through his life, yes.
Well, there's a wisdom, or let's say an intelligence. There's a native intelligence that allows him to pick up from the world that he's living in. He must be a person who read widely and who picked up things and then was able to make connections and apply them. So he reads this or that about psychology, connects it to mystical theology, and he puts those things together with prayer and all that. And I think that's the kind of thing that drew people to him. It's certainly something that draws me to him in reading him, is because he's drawing from what seems like a wide and deep source pool.
He was really I guess we don't call him a Renaissance man anymore, but he really had a restless intellect.
Yeah.
And he made it and he had a Ph.D. in philosophy. He was in theology. He had an agrégé, which is a degree above a Ph.D. From the University of Louvain. He was at that point the first American to ever have an agrégé, and the first person in 10 years to get another award for his Ph.D. thesis, which he turned immediately into a book. But anyway, he's an academic. So when he was looking into communism, he read everything he could find on communism.
Yeah.
And when Khrushchev showed up here, he was introduced to Khrushchev, and Khrushchev looked at him and he said, "I know you. You know more about Marx than I do." And I thought, bingo.
That's pretty good.
I just got back from the Focus Pastor Summit in Denver, and one of the things that Focus talks about, like in the art of evangelization, is having both the art and the science. The science is, all of the things that we know about bringing a person to Christ. The art, is that human dimension, and so you mentioned before, like he was very much of a people person, and even what you just said, like kind of reading up on people, reading up on culture, so that when he entered into a conversation with them, he knew them, and by knowing them was able to enter into their experience and then bring the science, which is the gospel tradition and other methods, again, to bring a person to faith. Is there anything else that you can think of in regards to the science piece, kind of his technique, his tools that he deployed?
He for the most part, those 42,000 plus are people who went through his classes. He had convert classes of up to 100 or more, and that he would have had bigger classes. He'd have one in New York and one in Washington, D.C. But where do you find a venue to give a class like that? Mm-hmm. The people that we know about the most are the celebrity people, because they talked about it. Mm-hmm. But I find that he was very early on in his career as a young priest told by the Holy Father to combat communism wherever he found it. Mm-hmm. And as long as I'm the Pope, I want you to preach against communism all the days of your life. Mm-hmm. And so he did. Again, he sort of looked into everything. So what's the science? What's the art? He would give people books. He would give them pamphlets. He would give them prayers. He would give them pictures of himself. He went 30 times to Fatima, and he would pray for them. Really pray for them. Yeah.
Well, say another piece out of his history that you probably have in the book is, again, he in my mind, he's sort of that figure who crosses the pre-media generation and then the media generation. And so he had a radio program, and then he had that amazing television program that was just popular because his approach to it was popular. He was just trying to reach the ordinary mom and pop and their kids out there in TV land. And so he made it funny and entertaining. And another person who speaks highly of him is Bishop Robert Barron, who is sort of the foremost figure of the Catholic media landscape today. Okay. And so maybe say a little of what was Sheen's trajectory there.
Well, I do know that from Bishop Barron that he did not keep a holy hour until it was introduced to him by some priests who were younger than he, sort of the next generation of priests who had found Fulton Sheen somehow before Bishop Barron did. And so he attributes his holy hour now to Bishop Sheen. The times in his life where he's dealing most with people, he gives everything of himself. And I think that people recognize that he is there for them. One of the converts' wife wanted to convert too. They were a communist couple. And he said to her, "Wherever I am in the country or in Europe or wherever I may be on Thursday night, I will fly to you to give you your lesson." Wouldn't be, sorry, can't do it this week. It'd be, no, I'm going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that dedication really comes across to the people that he loves and cared for. And you find time after time in the book, I say, and they loved him forever. The people that he converted really, really loved him.
Mm-hmm.
There were some false conversions, but, out of 42,000 plus, that's going to happen.
Sure. Yeah, the other thing he had was perfect hair.
He did have perfect hair. And he had really interesting way of speaking. His dialect was totally his own. I think it's because all the time he spent in Europe and all the time he spent learning other languages. So he doesn't sound like a boy from Peoria, Illinois. He doesn't sound like a kid from Brooklyn.
Right.
It doesn't sound like any American voice you've ever heard.
Right.
But it was a voice you would never forget.
And yes, that's another feature of his. Again, it's a natural gift, but he had a perfect media voice, radio voice.
He did, yes. He had a terrific voice. And as Jackie Gleason, who was the comedian, pointed out to him, your timing is perfect. When you're a comedian, you're telling stories, you have to have this pause.
Yep.
And he had that pregnant pause that, had the audience like, what? Tell me the rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or when he went to the prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. with President Carter, he's pretty old by this time. Mm-hmm. And he gets up. And in fact, Billy Graham was there. He was going to be the backup. Billy Graham said that he thought that Bishop Sheen was the best communicator in the world at that time, for
That's high praise from Billy Graham.
Yeah, very high praise from somebody. So he begins his speech. Sheen gets up, and he looks directly at the president, Carter. He said, Mr. President, you are a sinner. And everybody's going,
Here we go.
It was that pause again. He said, I'm a sinner. We're all sinners. And then I said,
yeah, right.
But sometimes it's in a joke, or sometimes it's in a, in train for something else like that.
If you can't answer this question, maybe a cut point here. Do you, if I ask you a question about kind of the history of Catholicism in the United States,
somewhat,
and then kind of what role he played kind of in this movement from the ghetto to the mainstream to
Sure.
Okay.
Do you want to ask that question?
I'll ask it. Yeah. So kind of back into the seriousness here. So when you look at the place that Fulton Sheen kind of played, like in the history of Catholicism in the United States, because we know from looking at that history, Catholics, when they arrived to this country, lived more kind of in ghettos, kind of in their language groups, were not accepted by kind of mainstream culture in the United States in those early days. But Fulton Sheen's coming along, and so where would you kind of place him in the history of the Catholic experience in the United States?
When he went on radio, and also when he was on television later, part of the mission for him was to make the Catholic Church and Catholicism more comfortable, more understandable, less foreign. There were all kinds of preachers out there who were saying, that Catholics in America pay more attention to the Pope in Rome than to the President of the United States, and that's where their values lie. I think you'll find that. So that was part of his shtick, if you will. He wanted to Americanize the Catholic Church, not by changing it in any way, but by making it more recognizable to the wider Protestant audience. His television audience, by the way, is thought to have been pretty much a third Catholic, a third Protestant, and a third Jewish. Yeah. So, he really was doing that. Now, in the First World War and in the Second World War, the Catholics made up more than a third of the fighting force. Okay, these are the ones that people are saying, oh, they're not really American.
Yeah, 'cause we went through a period of time where it was questionable whether you could be an American and a Catholic because of one's allegiance to the Pope.
Exactly. And he really fought that. In pleasant and charming ways.
Yeah.
But it's really not until the Second World War is over and people are going into the suburbs that I think Catholics became much more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it raised its anti-Catholicism raised its ugly head when John Kennedy ran.
Mm-hmm.
You had Al Smith, that was much younger, much earlier in his career for Sheen. That brought out lots of anti-Catholic bias. So there really was a legitimate claim of anti-Catholic bias in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But as they moved into the suburbs and moved into the universities and they moved into the professions,
Mm-hmm.
they finally became accepted as fellow Americans.
Right.
I didn't win over everybody, but it was not a constant thing.
Right.
Yeah, so one of the blessings of Archbishop Sheen to U.S. Catholicism, he was a huge kind of prophetic voice, like in that movement from kind of ghetto Catholicism to mainstream Catholicism, and then finding that platform of radio and media to be that forward-facing face of the Roman Catholic Church in this time of transition. I think we can look to him with great gratitude because I think as we live our Catholic faith today, we forget our history, that it is not always, we've not always been integrated, into the U.S. culture. And I think he was one of the voices that helped expedite the process of Catholics being a trusted neighbor and a trusted friend with others who are not Catholic.
When he was on radio, it was a Catholic program, Catholic Hour, and it was by the I think was the precursor to the council, the USCCB.
Oh, uh-huh.
It was like the Council of Catholic Men, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It was clerics. But at any rate, that could be, that platform allowed him to talk to Catholics more exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
Once he went on television, he had to be much more ecumenical.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to be ecumenical.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that he found in the late 60s and into the 70s was that he often had more in common with a Billy Graham
Sure.
than with the bishop in the next diocese.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As sort of the post-Vatican II church, you had people doing the letter of the documents, and you had people doing the spirit of the documents.
Yeah,
and sometimes those two did not go together too well.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking kind of the history and mentioning Vatican II, he was known to have befriended Bishop Karl Wojtyła, whom we now know as St. John Paul II. And so what did you uncover about that unique relationship between Archbishop Sheen and now Pope
I love that story.
John Paul II?
John Paul II, as a young bishop from Krakow, partially learned English from listening to Bishop Sheen's tapes.
Huh.
Is that not amazing?
That's great.
And so when they got to the Vatican Council, Wojtyła went looking for Bishop Sheen.
Sure.
And he made a plea with Bishop Sheen that we should no longer consider geographical destinations as mission territory. He thought it should be wherever the need is.
Yeah.
And Wojtyła said, we need priests, and therefore we need seminarians, and yet we can't afford that. And, and they're still under Soviet
Right.
rule, pretty much. And then they wrote letters. I think his letters, I quote a good bit from his letters the letters back and forth between John Paul II and Fulton Sheen. And probably the most kind of beautiful moment for the two of them was when John Paul II made his first visit here to the United States. He went to New York City, of course. He said a couple of masses to hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
But when he went into the St. Patrick's Cathedral, he looked around and he did not see Bishop Sheen, who was so ill he was kind of off to the side. maybe not even, out in the nave. So he said, where's Bishop Sheen? And so Sheen came out to him. At this point, he's really elderly and really fragile because he died in really a couple months later. But he went to his knees to kiss the ring, and the Pope just lifted him up and said he'd been a good son of the church. It was really a beautiful moment.
Yeah, they would have recognized fellow showmen in each other.
True.
Probably.
And both of them used that to good effect in their ministry.
Sure.
They both had the natural talent of being kind of a showman and being able to grab people's interest. Both were sort of actors, not in a negative way, but in a way that allowed them, Sheen with his angel, and he moves to this side of the set while they erase the board there, and then he's always clutching the cross, and he moves to this side. So they would have seen that in each other, I think, and appreciated that in each other. Certainly, Wojtyła would have recognized that in Sheen.
For sure.
If you look at, again, the underpinnings of St. John Paul II being a phenomenologist, kind of really the study of the human experience as his philosophical principle that underlined his theology, and going back to what we said earlier about, Fulton Sheen's just great capacity to enter into the human experience. I think they're both, very similar in that regard, and probably had a mutual respect, for that interest.
Yes. Let me tell a story about Claire Booth Luce. It's a conversion story.
Remind me who she is.
All right. She was married to Henry Luce, who was Time Incorporated. He was the owner and CEO of the Time Incorporated, which was lots of magazines. It was her idea that they do a Life magazine.
Oh, okay.
And then there's also, I think, sports. It's just a big conglomerate now. But at that time, so they were a very important couple. She had grown up with a mother who was not married to her father. The father didn't stay long with them. And her mother went on to find other wealthy men to take care of the family. And so her daughter, Claire, had followed in that same footsteps. But when she married Luce, they were equals. They were both extremely intelligent, both dedicated to anti-communism, both sort of wanted to get America into World War II. They thought we need to get in there and get going because this is going to be harder if we don't. By the time they've been married for a while, the marriage is kind of cooled, and he was contemplating divorce. Her mother had died. Her father had died. Her only child had died in a horrendous car accident. She had had 3 friends who had jumped out of high-rise windows. She was really considering that. And yet her guardian angel was looking after her. She instead telephoned a priest that she had known by just mail. She had been a congresswoman. She was a congresswoman at the time.
Okay.
So he said, I know what you need. She said, my soul is in torment. He said, I know what you mean. What you need is Fulton Sheen. I'll have him call you. So Fulton Sheen called her and invited her to dinner at his apartment. She went, and he said, well, we won't talk religion over the meal. But afterwards, I'll talk for 5 minutes, and you can talk for as long as you want, ask whatever questions you want to ask. And so they had their pleasant little dinner, a little tense perhaps. And after dinner, he starts telling her about God. And he says that God is all good. Well, she explodes out of her chair. I mean, I like to think it probably pushed back over and fell over. I mean, she would be that kind of person. Why can you call him good when he's taken my daughter and taken my, everybody in my family? And that can't be a good God. And he said several other things, but at the very end of what he said was, your daughter Anne has paid the price of your redemption. She died so that you would be here taking instructions into the Catholic Church. I think, were I that mother, that grieving mother, I might have said, I'm sorry, I'm out of here. But he intuited that's what she needed. She said at that moment, she knew that he was the one to bring her into the Catholic Church.
Yeah. There was a directness there that she probably resonated with.
And that is part of his art.
It's part of the art, yeah.
That he did that with several people.
Yeah. Not so much the directness, but the ability to discern what this person in front of me needs. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you read that deeply into somebody? Having never met them.
Yeah. Because directness, misdirected, can get you in a lot of trouble.
I would think so.
Absolutely.
I would think so.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I have not read the book yet, but I look forward to reading it.
Okay.
And I think you've done some signings of it at the cathedral, right? I think so. Yeah.
We sold 50 books that day.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
I was amazed.
Well, one thing that people can take from the program today is the book. And so, again, it's called Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen, Convert Maker, but more widely, Sheen himself. And as I say, we live in the media age now where it's easy to find all kinds of things. So you can just Google search him on YouTube or anywhere else, find his old black and white TV episodes that were so fun to watch, still are. Listen to him in the car, all the things. So, and that would be a good way for people to spend their time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, again, whether he's canonized or not, I think he is a good patron for us to look to. And again, the day in which we're living, where, again, we're having to find new methods and means to make our Lord known. Bishop's pastoral letter, Jesus is Lord, is really, again, putting a lot of renewed emphasis in our diocese on, again, the art and the science of evangelization as we in our parishes try to do what Fulton Sheen did on a very wide stage out in the public sector. So I think he's a great modern day example for us to continue to draw wisdom from.
He certainly is.
Yeah.
Good. Father Gary, you're our new host. You want to close us out today?
Sure. It's a joy to be here and to fill this seat as we keep Tulsa time moving forward. And so, Bishop, thank you for your invitation for me to fulfill this position. And Cherie, thank you for, again, your faithfulness. First and foremost, you and Bill are just wonderful parishioners at the cathedral. You give in so many ways, but also on a wider scale, thank you for your own contribution to the wider church by bringing forward the life and the example of Fulton Sheen. So we can pray our glory be today as we end our Tulsa time. All glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.